Okay, we are talking through how to create a character in Those Who Dare, the Stone to Space Age RPG. I'm Lucanus, and I'm here with my co-designer.
Hi, Tom.
Alrighty, so what we're going to be doing is running through a complete character creation. This does not take very long in Those Who Dare. I'll be directing, and Tom will be taking the role of a new player. Okay, so first off, we're just going to run through the elements of the character sheet. So there's 3 main pages, and then there's a notes page on the back. You're going to need 2 pieces of paper, and they're divided into the different phases of the game. So first up, we have free play. So free play is when you're free roaming as a party. You know, you might be exploring a town or just roaming in the wilderness, but you have no particular time constraints on you. You can perform lengthy activities, but nothing that takes, many days. Just the kinds of things that you do when you're out and about. On the next page, we have the action phase. So this is when you do have time constraints. So this is the page that you'll be looking at if you're in combat, or if you're in the midst of a tense argument with another character, or you're under some kind of other significant impact on your time.
Right, so like a chase or some sort of disaster or anything that puts a pressure on you.
That's right, yeah. If you're being chased through the streets by the police, then action phase is often where you'll be for this. And then you'll see as well that both free play and action, they line up with the third page. So we have a sidebar here which shows the elements of the game that are common to all the phases, predominantly being your stress, which is a universal player resource that you spend or have taken from you when certain events happen in the game, and it represents, digging deeper or being pushed to your limits.
Right, interesting.
And then when we reveal the rest of that page, we have downtime. So downtime is where you're resting and recuperating, and it's also when you're working on longer term things, which are called projects. So here you've got your downtime action. So a downtime isn't just a night's rest. A downtime typically is at least a couple days of rest, but it can actually be weeks or even months. Downtime represents when you don't need to track what's going on a day-to-day basis in the game. You also track things like the gear you're carrying, your relationship with other factions, things that you don't need every day on your character, but you need to refer to sometimes. So that is the Those Who Dare character sheet. At any given time, you only need to look at one of these pages, and that keeps things nice and simple. So now we're going to actually create a character. So step 1 is choosing a founding.
Great, well tell me about the setting that our story is taking place in. Obviously this is the Stone to Space Age RPG, so there are a lot of different options.
That's correct. We could be playing in any era of human history or even its future, but today we're going to be focusing on a 16th century merchant vessel traveling between Europe and Africa, looking for juicy trade opportunities. So you are likely going to be someone who would be working on or traveling on a ship like this. Foundings represent like the upbringing or your character's life before they join the campaign, but they're quite varied and versatile.
I think that my character is running from something. Something's happened in their past, which they're trying to get away from, which is why they've become a sailor. So I'm going to take the radical founding, which says that I was raised loyal to one particular faction, but with a fierce rivalry from another. So my character's quite a firebrand.
Okay, fascinating. Well, then a ship headed for Africa would be a real safe place to hide. So what the founding does is it tells you a little bit about what your character's life was like before we begin the campaign of this game, but it also gives you it nudges you towards certain types of character abilities, and it also gives you a basic what's called a character development pool. So most upbringings come with 10, these numbers are all still being balanced and play tested, but 10 character development points, which you can then use to spend on character abilities a little bit later in creation. So next up is your character traits at the top of the page there.
Right, so I see that there is a couple of different options. Could you walk me through what the difference between virtue, quirks, and flaws are?
Absolutely. So this is one of the most unique aspects of Those Who Dare. So your character traits are aspects of your character, but any character trait can present as a virtue, a quirk, and a flaw. And you're going to need to select all three of these. You'll get 3 traits that just help define what is unique and special about your character. They offer a wide variety of abilities and come in different levels of complexity for beginning or experienced players. But you'll need to select them to be whether they're a virtue, a quirk, or a flaw. So, for example, you could be calm as a flaw or as a virtue, or you could be angry as a virtue.
Right, well, looking at the list I have here, I think I'm going to take the careful virtue.
Okay.
So the careful virtue says here that during free play, instead of gaining plus 1d6 to checks, I gain a free gambit instead.
That is a fantastic ability. So that means that you'll just generally be more reliable when you have the time to complete your activities with care.
Great. All right. And then what's a quirk exactly? Like, tell me about that.
So quirks are attributes that don't specifically fit into the category of good or bad. They can be a mix of both, so they can often have a positive and a negative to them, or they can be quite game-changing. So some quirks will actually change the way parts of your character will function.
All right, I'm going to take the appealing quirk, which says that I gain +1 psi minus skill, but I take 1 stress every time I fail individual skill checks in free play.
Okay. That's quite a game-changing ability. So this is what we call an advanced ability, which is giving you quite a significant benefit. However, that additional stress is going to really alter the way that you use this character.
So I imagine in this case, it's my character is used to being quite charming and friendly, and so if they fail, their ego can't take it and they get a little bit more stressed than their normal character.
Yeah, the curse of success. So flaws are things that typically present as a negative in your character. So these are balanced against virtues, and they can be the kind of expected. You could be things like clumsy or forgetful, but even things that are typically perceived as good about a character could be a flaw when presented in the wrong way.
I'm going to take the gregarious flaw, which says here that on stressing out, I'm unable to be quiet, and increase the difficulty of all stealth checks by 2.
Okay, well that's quite a game-changing ability as well, as it means your character is going to be very unreliable at doing things stealthily or without being noticed. Stressing out is something that most characters are going to do at some point or another, so and the times that you take stress the most often are during action scenes where things are often their most tense. So this is a trait that when things are fine, you're probably not even going to notice it that much, but then when things are going wrong, this could really exacerbate the situation.
I think that really fits into the character I want. Obviously, they've got a bit of a big mouth, especially when stressed, and maybe they've talked themselves into this situation and now have had to flee for new lands.
Excellent. I like the sound of it. So that is the first couple of steps. You'll see aptitudes have the front and center space there in the middle of the free play. Now, your aptitudes represent your basic potential in 4 different areas of the game. So you've got your fitness, which is just your general physical fitness. You've got your danger, which is a little bit more abstract and represents the potential your character has to do harm to others of any kind. You've got cognitive abilities, which represent your raw academic intellect. And then you've got your psyche, which represents your social capability. Now, in any game, your GM is going to give you an aptitude pool, which they can decide if that's higher or lower to adjust the difficulty of the game, but the recommended start is 5 aptitude pools. So we're going to start with that. So you've got 5 points to allocate into your 4 different aptitudes. They can't start as higher than 3, and it just goes on a 1-to-1. So go ahead and allocate your aptitudes.
Great. Well, I think I'm going to build a reasonably balanced character, so I'm going to have at least 1 in all of them, which only leaves me 1 extra point left over. And I think I'll put that point into psyche and have my character be relatively better than normal at these social activities.
Sounds good.
So I've put 1 into each of these points here, and I see that there's a dice here as well. What does that represent?
So the dice there represents what this actually does for you. So your level of any of these abilities gives you dice to spend on any check. So with a 1 in anything, it would mean that you'd have 1 dice to spend on any of the 4 different types of checks.
And now I've got an extra point though, and I'll put that into Psyche, and so we'll make that 2 instead of 1.
Fantastic, which would mean that you'd have 2 dice to spend for Psyche.
Great.
Alrighty, next up is allocating your development. So, from your upbringing, you've got 10 development points, and you've got a list there of what you can buy with your development points. But the most important thing for any character to be purchasing with their development points are their skills. So we have major and minor skills, and by default you can have 6 major skills and 3 minor skills. The major skills are listed, and different ages and settings will have different lists of major skills that you can take, and these all have specific abilities they can unlock for you, whereas minor skills are up to the player to come up with. So your major skills could be things like balance, or your ability to use a specific melee weapon, or your experience in a specific scientific field, things like that. Whereas your minor skills are very versatile and they support your major skills. So for example, you could have the balance skill because you're used to, say, sailing on a ship and you have a lot of experience with keeping your balance, but then you might take the minor skill of moving on wet surfaces, which could support you when the deck's all soaking wet in a storm or during turbulent seas.
Great. Well, I think I'm going to build, keeping in theme, a relatively broad character with a bit of a social bent. So I think I want to take at least a social skill, and I see there's a few different options. Tell me more briefly about the different types of how persuasion and social interactions work in the game.
Sure thing. So the social skills are divided into 4 primary methods of interacting with other characters or other people. So you've got logos, pathos, ethos, and mythos. And each of these 4 are a different way that people interact. So logos is your use of logic and reasoning and facts to support your interactions with other people. Pathos is your sort of emotional and using your use of emotion and revving people up to interact with them. Your ethos is your appeals to authority and structure. And finally, mythos is intimidation, bullying, or otherwise undermining other characters.
Right. Well, I think my character is going to take pathos, at least 1 level. So I've got 10 points, and it looks like each level 1 skill costs 2.
Correct.
We've got 5 options. I'm going to take level 1 in pathos, as he's a bit of an emotional manipulator. I think I will also take, I see here there's a skill called planning as well.
Correct.
So what does planning do?
So aside from the 4 main Psyche skills, there's also a few other Psyche major skills, such as planning. And planning helps to support your downtime activities, as well as offers a few other advantages. So if you're going to, for example, try to come up with a strategy for dealing with, say, another character about town who's been spreading rumors about your party, you might use planning to give yourself an advantage on a later check.
I think that works with my character. He's a bit of a social scheme, which is why he's now here. I think as well he has a little bit of a dangerous side to him, so I'm going to give him the martial arts skill, all at level 1 as well.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. So that leaves me with a few more points. I'm going to take a minor skill. And so what's the difference between minor skills and major skills?
Sure. So major skills are what you use to lead your checks wherever possible. Minor skills can't be used to perform skill checks. However, they can support your major skills. So if, for example, in this case, you had the minor skill of, say,
I was going to say deception.
Yeah, cool. So say you had the minor skill of deceiving others. then that might support either of your, that could support your pathos social skill, but it could also support your planning skill if your planning involved tricking other people or deceiving them. So it's up to the player to convince the GM at times that their minor skills can work in these situations.
Could I even use my deception minor skill in a martial arts way to potentially get to trick someone into lowering their guard before I strike?
You could in the right circumstances, yeah. As long as you can explain how it makes sense to your character to use this to support their major skills, then it can offer various bonuses depending on the level of the minor skill.
Great. Well, I think I've got 2 more points left, and I see that I could buy a inn with a faction as well for
Correct.
2 points. So how would that work, and what would that do if I was to buy a relationship with a faction?
If you were to buy a relationship with a faction, that would allow you to start with an existing relationship, and in this case, a positive relationship if you're already in with a faction. So in the context of this game, there's a number of different factions that you might want to be in with.
I think that my character probably comes from the underworld, so maybe it makes sense that they are somewhat connected, or I guess here it says solid with the underworld.
Correct. So you could start out solid with the underworld. So in this case, this campaign is set predominantly on a ship, but they will be stopping in various ports and having connections. Those less scrupulous figures could offer all sorts of benefits like access to special stores or being able to get special favors done for you.
Great. Well, I think that's it.
Fantastic. Well, that is all of your development spent. The other things, there's a variety of other things you can spend your development points on, such as perks or talents, but we'll run through those another time. I will just touch as well on, though, each of your skills that you purchase comes with perk points as well. So every single major skill has its own tree of perks that you can unlock. And for every level you have in that skill, you get 1 perk point to spend in that tree. So the way that perks work is that they start out with basic abilities that mostly give you either additional actions, activities, or projects to take during free play, action scenes, or downtime. And then as the tree grows out, it unlocks additional abilities to improve your special actions or to boost your character's raw stats. There's quite a variety of them.
Great. So I could specialize into a particular martial arts school or a particular way of emotionally working with people.
Exactly. And as of the making of this video, we've got, I think, around about 360 or 380 perks already made, with more to come.
And we're only building on it, right?
That's right. There's a lot more in the works, so there's no shortage of ways to customize what your character can do. So that leads us to the final step of character creation, which is to customize your character, which is just choosing their name, appearance, or any other special non-mechanical things you'd like to note about your character. One thing I'll also note that we haven't gone over that you might have missed from other character creation that you may miss from character creation in other games is that we haven't allocated any equipment. So it is possible to start with special equipment, but the way that Those Who Dare handles most equipment is that your equipment will actually come from your community rather than specifically from your character's own personal possessions. You may, and almost certainly will, end up with special items that are unique to your character, but if you were, say, the member of a ship's crew, you would likely get any weapons or special armor actually provided by the ship. So in that case, you would have a community of the ship which has its own sheet that's tracked by the group collectively, and we'll cover that off in another video. But in that case, you'd probably get, swords, pistols, cuirasses, or bucklers from the ship rather than carrying them around yourself all the time. And you don't need to track your own special items.
Great. And so down the track, I could find my special sword or like great outfit or something.
Exactly.
But I have access to all the basic equipment that a ship would have access to.
Exactly. So we keep that tracking on your own sheets to a minimum. one other way that you can go about character creation that is separate from this, which is the full character creation, is we also have something called archetypes. So if you just need to create a quick character for a one-shot, or because you were just joining in on a campaign for one session, or you just didn't feel like running through the full character creation, you could choose an archetype, and most settings and campaigns will have a list of archetypes that you can choose from that will guide you through 90% of character creation. So, if you selected, for example, to play at night, you'd already start with a set choice of weapon skills, perhaps horse riding.
Great. I see under the generic list in the dangerous category, there's the scoundrel, who's a general all-rounder in nefarious deeds. So that feels like if I was going to build this character instantly for an archetype, I'd just take the scoundrel, give him a name, and then I'd be good to go, right?
Pretty much. Most archetypes do almost all of character creation for you. Many of them do leave you with a choice or two. You might have one or two character development points left over just to really make that character your own. But when selecting an archetype, you should be able to go from a blank sheet to ready in 5 minutes or so. So that is creating a character in Those Who Dare from start to finish, and I hope you have some great games.
Great. Thanks.